Is it so you're lost in dreams beside the world? Wanna go where I'm not?
Hello, good evening Jim and good evening all, and welcome to the My 70s podcast with me, the Gabbie and football supremo, ace and a legend, Mr. Jim Mccalliog. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Gabbie. Yeah, I'm very good. I'm looking forward to tonight, and I hope it's of interest to all the people out there. And I had a wonderful career in football, and I still love the game.
We all do. We all did. It's a love of the game that really never diminishes and never dies, although we might not like it or love it as much as what we used to, because there's certain things in the game that put us off a little bit. But when we see the game played as it should do and should be played, it is like watching poetry in motion. There is no greater game on the planet than association football. Now, you started your career in Scotland, in, for me, football's capital of Scotland, Glasgow, didn't you?
Yeah. It all started from there in the school team and in the boys' club team, and then further afield on to Glasgow schoolboys and then Scotland schoolboys, and then I had quite a few clubs looking for me to go to sign for them, and I decided to go to Leeds United.
Now, in those days, the Scottish football, for people that are watching Scottish football these days, you could say it's in a little bit of a decline. Back in those days, where you come through the back streets of Glasgow, because you were from the Gorbals, wasn't you?
Yeah, I was from the Gorbals, proud as well to have come from the Gorbals. Great people there. Never ever hidden the fact that I was from the Gorbals. A lot of people kind of think, oh, it's not such a nice place, but that's up to them. As far as I was concerned, we were brought up well, and I thoroughly enjoyed being in the Gorbals, and that was where I got a lot of the football from, and there were certainly some great players in the Gorbals that could have gone on to bigger and better things, but unfortunately it didn't happen for them.
And Scotland produced some of the greatest players that's ever graced the planet, and we're going to talk about a few of them. But there was a great team that were growing up during those early 60 years that went on to conquer European football. You went to Leeds as a youth player. Was there ever a chance that you could have gone to that grand old team of the boys and Celtic?
Yes, unfortunately, twice Celtic came after me, and I had already gone to Leeds first of all, and then when I came back from Leeds, I went to Chelsea, and Celtic were represented twice, trying to get me to go to Celtic, but it's just one of them things, Gabbie. Yeah. It wasn't to be, and of course I was thrilled. As Celtic became the first team in Europe to win the European Cup, and that was fabulous, and especially it being all nationals and all born within 35 miles of Celtic Park.
Now, the only one that was born a little bit out of Glasgow was it Bobby Lennox? He was a foreigner, wasn't he? He wasn't a Glaswegian.
Bobby was in Ayrsham, and Bobby was a great player first and foremost, but he's also a superb human being, and we know, me and Debbie, my wife, we know Bobby and Catherine, Bobby's wife, very well, and they're lovely people.
Now, in that 67, the year England had just won the World Cup, on the 11th of April in 1967, a group of young Scottish players come to Wembley and showed England really how to play football, and for some time after were undisputed champions of the world because you've beaten the European champions. Let's start there before we go back to Leeds, because, you know, that was not the first time that a Scottish team had come to Wembley. In 1928, there was another group of Wembley Wizards when it was Alex Jackson and Alex James totally destroyed England 5-1. Did Scotland that day in 67 draw anything from the 1928 demolition of England?
I don't think so, Gabbie, but the thrill of it all for me was that most of the players in the team, I had seen them from afar, and to be lining up with them to play against England, who were the world champions and hadn't been beaten, I think it was for 19 games, which showed you what a good team that England were. But the thing was, we had a lot of great players in our team, and I think we were pretty confident, although obviously England were favourites. But I think, honestly, Gabbie, I think I was one of the few Scotsmen really to appreciate England winning the 1966 World Cup final at Wembley, because obviously I was plying my trade in England, and I thought that can only be good for the game in England. And I was thrilled when they won the World Cup, and then to come up against them the following year on my debut, that was just a dream come true.
How did it feel? Talk me through the goal, because Jinky wasn't playing, he was injured. And I think, did Bobby Lennox play in that game, or was it Bobby Murdoch? One of the Bobbies was injured and didn't play, didn't they?
Yeah, it was Bobby Murdoch. Bobby Murdoch didn't play. Yeah. Bobby Lennox was one of the goal scorers. Yeah. So, that was it, yeah.
And it was a 1-2 with you and, was it Willie Wallace? And you took the ball in. Tremendous, the way that you got in, little 1-2, and just dinked it over Banksy. That must have given you such pleasure. It made you jump almost as high as my house.
It certainly does, and it still makes me jump, but not quite as high these days, Gabbie. But the thing was, what was happening really, it was coming towards the end of the game. I knew there was probably, maybe 5 minutes left, and Billy Bremner, who was very astute, playing the timeout, because Leeds United used to do this a lot. Billy took the ball down into the left-hand side corner, and as he took it down there, I thought that there's nobody really around, so I just made a beeline for Billy, and as Billy got the ball, he passed it to Bobby Lennox, who passed it on to my good self, and I was at this time just outside the 18-yard box, so I just turned to the right a little bit, played a 1-2 with Willie Wallace, was on my way to smashing it into the goal, and I was worried because Bobby Moore was closing down on me, and so was Gordon Banks coming at his goal. But I got there before them, and the ball was in the back of the net, and it was a wonderful moment. But I felt completely in control of what was going on, Gabbie. And to me, for me being so young and to be able to do that, I thought that was. I was really pleased with myself without taking it out of context. But when it hit the back of the net, it was fantastic, because as a kid in the Gobbles, playing on the bowling greens, we were always playing England, and I was always scoring for Scotland against England, and that was the dream, and the dream came true.
Well, it is the oldest rivalry in football, the first international game, of course, 1872, but they played friendly games before that. So the rivalry goes back an awful long time. Now, there's an urban myth that before the game kicks off, the 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go before the whistle's blown and you're out into the tunnel and you get lined up, Slim Jim was reading the Racing Post. Is that true or is that fiction?
No, that's fiction. No, Jim Baxter was probably one of the most confident players I ever played with. Great guy. No, he was certainly focused on the game, and so was the other players in the team. And we had some great players, i.e. Dennis Law, Bobby Lennox, Billy Bremner, Tommy Gemmell, John Gregg, and of course Jim Baxter, and we had like I said, we had a lot of players that really wanted to do well against England.
The way I see it, and the way I look at both the teams, my honest opinion that if the World Cup would have been in Scotland and played at Hampden Park, I think you guys could have been the world champions because you were a match for England. You look at and you reference the names there. The great Caesar, Billy McNeil, he wasn't in the team. It was McKinnon, he kept him out. And you got players that were in and around that were injured. And when you look, I mean, Dennis Law, there was no greater inside forward than Dennis Law. And Jim Baxter, let's talk briefly about Slim Jim. Why did they call him Slim Jim, and how brilliant a footballer was Jim Baxter? Because in that game, he also played keepy uppy as well. How did the English players perceive that?
Well, I don't think they were too happy about it because that's something really that you don't always do and things like this. But Jim was called Slim Jim because obviously he was tall and he was slim, but he was quite a character. And I remember in the dressing room before the game, Bobby Brown, who was our manager, his style of management was that he would come and have a quiet word with you and wish you all the best. But for some unknown reason, about quarter of an hour before the game started, Bobby Brown, our manager, started to talk, and Jim Baxter had a ball in his hands, and as soon as Bobby, the manager, started to talk, Jim started bouncing the ball, and he says, "Aye, great, Bobby, right, lads, let's go outside." And I was sat there, my first game, 20 years of age, and I'm thinking, what do I do here? It was Bobby Brown trying to do a team talk, and it was Baxter taking most of the team out to the tunnel.
Yeah.
So I ended up going towards the tunnel with Baxter, and all we could hear in the background was Bobby Brown shouting, "All the best, lads, all the best, lads." And we just went out and we played England.
But do you think that's, again, looking at it as a football fan, you're going into the Lions' Den, you're literally the free Lions' Den. England are the world champions. You need that little bit of confidence, exuberance, almost arrogance, if you like, to go onto their stage and take that game to them. And I guess that's pretty much what Jim Baxter was doing to all you guys, especially the younger players.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And so was Dennis. The wonderful thing for me was on the Thursday morning before the game was when we trained. And I could see what quality that Baxter had, and Dennis Law, and I knew Billy because Billy was at Leeds, and the Scottish players, i.e. John Gregg, Bobby Lennox, Ronnie McKinnon, and that filled me with confidence. I thought England will have to be at their best here because I thought the manager had picked a really good squad, and the team was complementing each other.
Now, you referenced Leeds United and Billy Bremner, and that was the first port of call for you down south. And there was also another fantastic Scots player, because you guys are called Scottish professors, wasn't you? Because you certainly had cultured feet. Because England used to play kind of rush around game of football, but it was the Scots really that refined association football, and no greater exponent of that than the wee barra, Bobby Collins.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Bobby. How brilliant was he?
Well, it was great when I was 15 to go down to Leeds United, and Bobby Collins was who obviously played for Everton in England and Celtic up in Scotland. And I watched Bobby play. I've seen him in internationals and what have you. And for him to be there and to watch him and see what he did and things like that, it was fantastic. He was a lovely guy. But the thing that other than his ability that really impressed me was he was always a tidy man. Yeah. He was always clean and tidy, always looked smart, and he always had a willing smile. And he was certainly a very confident person, but he was a good player. There's no doubt in that.
Now, my understanding of Wee Barra is a little fella that's got quite a lot to say for himself. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I think most wee guys have, don't they?
Yeah.
I think the big guys are the gentle giants, because not only was Bobby Collins there, but at the time I went there, John Charles come back from Italy. So we had John Charles there. John would play either centre forward or centre half, and Bobby Collins, and you know they were great examples for the young players who, of course, all went on to have great careers at Leeds, i.e. Norman Hunter, Billy Bremner. You can go through them all. Gary Sprake, Eddie Gray, Peter Lorimer, all these guys, and I'm sure, and Jimmy Greenough as well. Yeah. I'm sure, you know, they picked up a lot from the likes of John Charles and Bobby Collins. And I know that Revie knew that. And then Revie was a great student of the game, Don Revie. And what he did for Leeds United, I think, was just short of amazing. And it's such a shame, really, that they did put their foot in quite a lot. And I think if they hadn't done that, I think they would be talked of more. A lot of people resented that. It wasn't very nice, that. But when they had the ball, it was very difficult to get the ball back off them.
Yeah, Alan Hudson, a pal of mine, and I do shows with Uddy. He says the only reason that Revie got rid of Jimmy was because he wouldn't leave his foot in. And you're right, Leeds did have that tag of being dirty, but Leeds also, and we have to say it as well with balance, Leeds United were one of the greatest British teams, certainly in my lifetime.
Yeah, they definitely were.
And they had a young boy that come from Manchester United named Giles. He was a decent player as well, wasn't he? Was Johnny around in them days?
Well, the thing was, at Leeds, you had Bobby Collins and Billy Bremner. Billy at first was a winger, so Billy moved into wing half, and he was in midfield with Bobby. And then, of course, when just before Bobby finished, John Giles came to Leeds, but he played on the right wing. But Revie decided that because he was so good with both feet, that he would put him in the middle of the park. And of course, that's where Johnny's career really took off more. And he was a fabulous footballer, was Johnny Giles. But he was also a player that could look after himself.
Silent assassin. That's what he was called, wasn't he? You know? Now you've left Leeds and you've gone from Whippets and Hats and up there in Yorkshire, straight down onto the King's Road to West London to Chelsea. It couldn't have been any different, could it? It's poles apart, Leeds and Chelsea. How did that move go?
Well, the thing was, Tommy Docherty tried to get me before I moved to Leeds as a 15-year-old. Yeah. And, of course, when I left Leeds and I got a bit in the papers from a couple of newspaper guys that I knew, he was the first on the phone, and he was quick in, and I talked to him, and everything was more or less decided. And then there was quite a few other clubs come in, but it was too late. I was going to Chelsea. But Tommy Docherty, in my opinion, was a great manager, but he doesn't get a lot of the credit that he deserves, because he's a very funny guy. He lives life with a smile. But when we were at Chelsea with Tommy Docherty, we were top of the league down there, and only for a terrible incident at the club, we could have gone on to win the First Division Championship. And he did it again with Man United. He nearly won the First Division Championship with Man United. So he was certainly a great manager in the making, and he was a young manager when he got me to Chelsea. But I loved it at Chelsea. And I don't know if Alan can remember Alan Hudson, but when I was at Chelsea, Tommy Docherty always encouraged the players to coach. Yeah. And he said to the younger players that he if anybody was interested in doing any coaching, that they could go along and do some coaching for with the young players at Chelsea on a Tuesday night and a Thursday night. Yeah. But I actually coached Alan when he was 14, Alan Hudson. I don't think he knows that. I'm not sure because I never ever mentioned it to him. But you could see then that Alan was going to be a special talent, and he certainly had a wonderful career. And it just shows you never know what's around the corner. You never know who you're with, Gabbie. So, that life's quite amazing.
And Alan was around the first team dressing room as well, and Alan talks fondly about them Tuesdays and Thursday nights because Alan went in at Fulham and he was told he was too small, and his dad took him to Chelsea because his older brother was at Chelsea.
Yeah, his brother was a nice lad. He was a funny lad. His brother, he played in the left wing.
Yeah, but you had some great players there. It was the Doherty Diamonds era, wasn't it? You got George Graham there, Terry Venables. When you reference that situation, was that at Blackpool when 8 players got a little bit worse for wear? Yeah,
that was the trouble. Yeah. They broke a curfew, and we were never the same after that. Unfortunately, that was one of the sad parts of my career, because we were all so young, but we were all together, and the team spirit was quite amazing. A lot of it was fostered by Tommy Doherty, but a lot of it was fostered by the players at Chelsea, especially Terry Venables, the captain. Terry was a smashing guy, and he was a guy that would build up the team spirit, and alongside the Tommy Doherty and the coach, who was Dave Sexton, who had a great career in management as well.
Al always says he was a great coach, not so much a great manager. Sadly, Tommy left and Dave took over. But you had you got a young Peter Osgood, Eddie McCready was there. You had some fantastic players, and Chelsea, as great as Leeds were in that mid-60s to mid-70s era, Chelsea were just 1 or 2 players away. Now, I'm guessing that if we was talking now to Tommy Marder says, do you know what? Sometimes I wished I had just turned the cheek or took no notice of what went on, because there was a culture at the football club, but boy, could these kids play football as well.
I think you would have to ask the boss that, because that was what happened. But the thing is as well, with due respect to the manager, you have to have discipline as well. Yeah. But I tend to agree with you a little bit, Gabbie, insofar as if the doc would have done it behind closed doors, I think it would have been better for him and for the team, because we were never the same after that. Mm.
And then your debut for Chelsea, I would ask you your favourite football ground, but I'm guessing you're going to say St Andrews. Thanks for that. 21st of November 1964, 2 days before I was born, you scored your two league goals for Chelsea when you stuffed us 6-1. But it was the October beforehand that you made your League Cup debut, didn't you, for Chelsea, again against Birmingham City?
Yeah, that's and I think I scored on that as well. I'm not 100% sure, but the thing was, I was quite unfortunate because I had 2 delayed debuts before I actually made my debut. I was 17 and I was taken to Sheffield with the first team, and Terry Venables was ill, and it looked like Terry wasn't going to make the game. But as it was, Terry was okay in the end, so I sat in the dugout. So I nearly made my debut at Sheffield Wednesday, and then that happened again. We were playing Manchester United, and I got a phone call on the Saturday morning that I had to get to Heathrow Airport and get up to Manchester, and I'd be picked up at Manchester Airport and taken to Old Trafford. And when I got to Old Trafford, Terry was okay, and I missed it again. So I watched the game, and I watched the Dennis Law hat-trick that day, a hat-trick of headers, which was quite amazing. but then I did eventually make my debut when I was 18, and my league debut was, like you say, was at Birmingham. But I was coming along really nicely, and I was getting stronger and all the rest of it, and a lot of things were happening for me. And of course, we played Birmingham at St Andrews, and we beat Birmingham 6-1. I got 2, and Big George Graham, who was a great player, George got 3, and I can't remember who got the other one. But I remember the headlines in the papers saying Chelsea as good as Busby's best, and that was a great start to my career.
And then it wasn't long after that you'd been in to see Tommy, and you put a couple of transfer requests in, and he told you to do one and jog on the first time. But I'm guessing after...
He chased me out of the dressing room. Chased me out of his office.
He wasn't very happy. He wasn't impressed.
No.
But what happened? How come you moved to Sheffield Wednesday? Was it just the fact that you was in and out of the team and all you wanted to do was play football? Because there was no doubt in your ability, because Sheffield Wednesday paid $37,500 and made it a British transfer record for a teenager in 1965. Yeah,
well, to be honest, Gabbie, that kind of filled me with a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
I thought if a respected manager like Alan Brown, who was at Sheffield Wednesday, if he was paying that amount of money for me, plus Chelsea were holding out for that kind of money, I thought I can't lose here, because I was obviously rated at Chelsea, and then going to Sheffield Wednesday for that amount of money, it was up to me just to go out and play football.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And to Alan Brown's credit, at Sheffield Wednesday, Alan Brown never ever told me how to play. He never said anything that I was doing this right, I was doing this wrong. He always let me get on and enjoy my football. And he was a terrific manager, probably one of the best man managers that was in the game at that time. But like I said, he was very well respected, and it was great to repay some of that money by getting to the cup final in '66.
Now, you got to the cup final and you scored, but before the cup final, you played in the semi-final against your former team. Now, I watched the YouTube clip, and I'm guessing when you play against your former team, you're absolutely elated. You wasn't, was you, when you scored that goal against Chelsea?
No, listen, I think it was just circumstances, Gabbie, because the year before I was in the Chelsea squad, and we got Liverpool in the semi-finals at Villa Park, and of course we got beat 2-0 then as well, and I know how disappointed everybody was, because we were a young side, and when we won, for whatever reason, I was thinking about, that was 2 years in a row that they'd lost at the semi-final stage. So although I was absolutely, elated for Sheffield Wednesday, for our fans, and for myself, I just really did genuinely feel sorry for Chelsea.
Now, Sheffield Wednesday and your next club, Wolverhampton, we're going to stay at Sheffield for a while and talk about those days and the cup final.
Yeah.
But them were the teams that you played about 150 games each, didn't you? Or probably slightly more, give and take. They were the two teams that largely football fans will remember you at, Sheffield Wednesday and at Wolverhampton Wanderers. What was life like back up north, back in Yorkshire, or South Yorkshire? Stringfellow had just opened a club up there, so it's a little bit like the King's Road, wasn't it? Going from the clubs on the King's Road back to Stringfellows.
Yeah, well, Sheffield was quite a buzzing place because Joe Cocker was playing in the local disco. There was quite a lot of guys around that were big names. Dave Berry, people like that. There was the Human League not long after that started. But like you said, Peter Stringfellow, he had a club outside Sheffield, and then he moved into Sheffield, and I think he called it the Penthouse or something like that.
Yeah.
But I would go in there and see him, and it was quite unusual because his mum was always on the door taking the money. So he wasn't taking any chances. So, but Peter did very well, but his brother was very talented as well. But unfortunately, he didn't become as famous as Peter.
But that Sheffield Wednesday team, they were also very talented. Terry Curran, who I do another podcast with, the Curran View, every week, Terry says, Jim was my favourite all-time owl.
Well, thanks, Terry. That's a big compliment. Much appreciated. I certainly loved my time at Sheffield Wednesday, Terry. Like I said, I had a manager who trusted in me. He let me get on with my game. We had a young side, but the important thing was we had experienced players as well. But the experienced players were great guys. Don Megson's who was captain's probably the best captain I've ever played under. Yeah. There was Jerry Young, who played for England. Jerry was a lovely guy. Geordie, Johnny Quinn was another smashing guy, and Johnny Phantom, who played for England, and in my opinion was always an underrated footballer because he was very strong. He was 2-footed, and I loved playing with them guys. And then of course we had the young guys. If you look at the young guys that we had Will Smith, who had every chance of being the England fullback. We had Peter Eustace, who was another one who could have got England honours, and I was sad he didn't get them either. There was also young Graham Pugh, who was coming through, and we had another player there, David Ford, and David Ford was another one who played for the under-23s for England. So we had a real good mix of a team. We don't think Wednesday had a great lot of money, but I thought Alan Brown hit on a style of play where I played deep behind, probably you would call it a number 10 role now, and John Phantom and David Ford played up as two strikers, and we had three other players in midfield who were moving about. We weren't tied to any roles. We just had to cover whenever we lost the ball, and it was a great way of playing.
Now, you got to the FA Cup final in 1966. You're still a young'un. You were still 19, wasn't you? You were still a teenager in that final. Am I right?
Yeah, I was still a teenager, yeah. Yeah, it was obviously back in Scotland. That was a big thrill to try and see the cup final. Yeah. And of course, the FA Cup final was a big thing then, possibly even as big as the league. But the league was a true test of champions. But what they've done with it now, it's really sad because I don't know why they've let it slip so much, because no other country had an FA Cup like England did and Scotland, and I just wish that the directors and people at football clubs and also the league and the FA Cup people would get the FA Cup back where it should be, and not concentrate so much on the Champions League and possibly the UEFA Cup.
Sadly, it is about money, and I think because of money, the semi-finals are played at Wembley as well.
Yeah, that spoils it.
Right, that was going to be my next question. It was a big
thrill, Gabbie, to get to the final. That was part of the carrot, to get to the final and play at Wembley. There was a lot more mystery to it then, and there was always that myth that was going around that Wembley's, the turf's so nice that it tires you out more than other grounds. But I just thought that was just a wee myth, and I wasn't going for that one.
So the Wembley turf isn't more sapping than
no, I don't think. Not in the times I've played. God, no, I don't think so at all.
So the 1966 FA Cup final, you're lining up against Everton, but before you're going out, while you're in the dressing rooms, there's TV cameras. The first FA Cup final, the cameras were allowed in dressing rooms, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, they didn't bother about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that. You're focused, you're thinking about the game, okay, the cameras, the press, the crowd, everything, that all goes along with the occasion, but you're still in a game of football and you've just got to concentrate on playing on the pitch. Whatever happens at the side or anywhere else, don't bother about it. I mean, I look at the players nowadays and they're all looking up at the TV to see what's happening. I don't understand that.
Yeah. Now, you went 2-0 up, you scored the first goal, and you're playing against Everton, one of the best footballing sides in the country, with that midfield of Kendall, Ball and Harvey.
No, that wasn't them. Gabbie.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
No, I need to correct you, young man. It was Jimmy Gabriel, Colin Harvey was in midfield.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it was still a bloody good midfield, and you went 2-0 up.
I'll tell you
scored the first goal,
I'll tell you the Everton team if you want, mate.
Yeah, go on then. Let's have that line up.
The Everton team was West, Parker, Wilson, Gabriel, LeBone, Harris, Scott, Trebilco, Young, Harvey, and Temple.
Yeah.
That was the team, and they dropped Fred Pickering on the day, Gabbie.
Right.
Fred Pickering had signed from Blackburn Rovers for 80,000, and Harry Catterick, who was an ex-Sheffield Wednesday manager, dropped him, Pickering on the day, and he put Mike Trebilco in. And, well, you know what happened, don't you?
Yeah.
So, I mean, good luck to Mike. That's the way football is. Sometimes you get a good break and sometimes you get the bad breaks, but, that's the way it was.
But you were coasting, and what was it like to score a goal in the FA Cup final? You scored a goal at Wembley the year after, but this was your first goal at Wembley Stadium, wasn't it, in '66? Yeah,
that was my first game at Wembley and my first goal at Wembley. It was a great feeling because, the Sheffield public, they really did get behind us and they were absolutely wonderful. But in particular, they were great to me, and they always were great to young players. They always gave young players a chance, and, they went on your back. They would give you, every encouragement. And to get to the cup final was fantastic. And we seriously thought we were going to win it. Yeah. We really felt good. But we knew Everton then were the Bank of England club. The Moores family, they had Littlewoods and Vernon's pools, and they were, plenty of money. Like I said, they dropped Fred Pickering, who cost 80 grand on the day of the cup final. So, they had everything going for them, Everton. And their fans were good as well, because the thing about Everton back in the day was that Everton were always a team that was trying to play football. They were known as the team of science, football science, and it was a pleasure to play against them. But for an hour, we had the game in our hands. And then all of a sudden, Mike Trebilco got a couple of goals, and then, of course, they got the winner, and, that's the way it goes.
I mean, it must have gone from literally elation to deflation, and I'm guessing the worst place to lose a game of football and the worst game to lose it would be in the FA Cup final.
No, the worst place to lose at Gabbie is in the semi-final.
Really?
Because at least you've got to Wembley.
Got
So Wembley was where we were all wanting to go. I mean, the league was great, and you know, it was a fantastic, the first division back then. But to play in Wembley was everybody's dream, and it didn't disappoint. And I mean, at half time we were absolutely buzzing, and then we come out in the second half and we scored straight away again. You know, it was fabulous.
But again, I guess that's football, isn't it? Sometimes you can't explain why the other team that are 2-0 down comes back 2-1, 2-2, gets the winner 3-2, and you almost look and you think, how the hell did that happen? How did we let it slip?
Especially
But football,
the goal. Especially the goalkeeper we had, Ron Springer. I mean, up until Gordon Banks came along, Ron was the England goalkeeper. In my opinion, Ron was a fabulous goalkeeper. He really was. And I couldn't see anybody getting, 3 goals past Ron, but it happens. That's football.
Now, the season after, you're still a Sheffield Wednesday player. In 1969, you moved from Sheffield Wednesday to Wolverhampton Wanderers. What happened? What happened there? Did the team kind of break up a little bit after the cup final defeat? Talk me through those days after Wembley.
I think after Wembley, what we needed was a couple of players, and we got some money from the FA Cup run, and we were some of the players we were all hoping that we'd maybe get another couple of players in to strengthen the squad a wee bit. But I think that's where we slipped up. I think we should have they should have invested after the cup final, and I think that would have paid dividends. And that was just the way it was.
Now, the move to Wolverhampton Wanderers, I didn't realise, because over here in England, we seem to live in our own little bubble, but it's a big world out there. And in America, they're just starting to play football, because they looked at the 66 World Cup, and they had a lot of viewers over there in America and thought, this game, it looks decent, let's start it in America. Well, they did, but it was the National American Professional League before the NASL, they were all guest teams, and the first final, East versus West, anyone that knows American football, the Eastern divisions play the Western divisions in, presume it's something like the Super Bowl final, the equivalent in football, but it was Aberdeen from Scotland versus Wolverhampton Wanderers, Washington Whips versus LA Wolves. That has gone down as one of the greatest games ever to have been played in America. So not only were you signing for a football club that had been pioneers of European football with the 53, the Honda game, they'd also won the cup. The Wolverhampton Wanderers had won everything. They were also champions of America. What was it like joining the great gold and black of Wolverhampton and coming to the Midlands?
Well, that was like I said, when I asked for a transfer with Sheffield Wednesday and I was going to leave, then Wolves came along, and like I said, I was interested in playing with Peter Knowles and with Mike Bailey in the midfield for Wolves. I thought that's a good start, and then we had Dave Wagstaff in one of the wings. And we had Derek Dugan, and the manager had just bought Hugh Curran, and Hugh Curran has scored a lot of goals for Norwich. He was a Scotsman, so I thought, that'd be a good move for me. So I went to Wolves and never regretted it. We had a really good team. We played a lot of good football, and of course we won the League Cup while I was there. And we lost the UEFA Cup final to, believe it or not, another English team, and that was Tottenham.
And then in 1969, in fact, they represented Kansas City in 1969. Wolves went back to America, and they were Kansas City Spurs. They weren't called Wolves, but they guessed it as a Spurs team. And Martin Chivers a couple of seasons earlier, when you played him in '72, he'd always got a goal in him against you guys, hadn't he, Martin Chivers?
Yeah, it was one of them things we talked about that, and Bill, the manager didn't really need to tell us, but we were talking among ourselves and saying, look, we've got to, whatever we do, especially in the first leg was at home at Molyneux, we have to look after Chivers.
Yeah.
But for some unknown reason, whatever, but Big Frank, who had a great career, Frank Monroe at Wolves, Big Frank had one of his off nights that night, and Martin Chivers scored 2 goals. So I got the goal for us, which made it 2-1 on the night, and I was quite happy, having put that in the back of the net. And then we had to obviously go to Spurs, and we had a lot on because Spurs had the 2 away goals. So we had really the thought of the boys in the team and the manager was, look, we've nothing to lose. Let's see what we can do. But as it happened, we drew 1 each at Tottenham, so we lost the UEFA Cup final 3-2.
And it was the first UEFA Cup final, wasn't it? It was the inaugural one.
Yeah, our manager actually wanted to play one game at Wembley,
yeah.
And he suggested it. But the UEFA committee or whatever, the powers that be, they were having none of it, and they wanted to play the 2 games.
Now, we're going to stay in 1972 with that European, the UEFA Cup run, but I do want to go back to the earlier days of Wolverhampton Wanderers because I want to talk about the great Peter Knowles. But you teamed up again with El Gigante and took John Charles to Turin with you when you played Juventus. That must have been an absolute masterstroke.
Yeah, that was terrific because we went to the airport, East Midlands Airport, to fly to Turin for the game, and at the airport I could see this big giant, and I thought that looks awful like John Charles, and as I got closer I could see it was him. And what Bill McGarry had done is because we were playing Juventus and John Charles was obviously a big name at Juventus.
Yeah.
And he had phoned up Big John and invited him to come along with us, which I thought was a great idea. And of course I knew him from when I was at Leeds, but that was quite a while ago, probably 7 or 8 years since that. And of course it was nice to see him and talk to him. But the wonderful thing was we had to be in the country, obviously, 24 hours before the game. So the following morning on the day of the game, we went for a little walk in Turin, and we went with Big John. There was about 5 of us, and we're walking down the streets, and word got around that John Charles was in town. And the next thing, they're all opening the windows all over the place. It was amazing. And there was people in the street, and they were all singing, Charlo, Charlo. And Big John was waving to them. It was quite amazing. And then we went back to the hotel, told the rest of the guys, and we mentioned it to the manager. And that night we went to they have a new stadium now, Juventus. It was the old stadium that we played them in, and when the teams went out, there was a great reception, but it wasn't as good a reception as when John Charles walked out alongside Bill McGarry to the dugout, and the whole place just erupted.
I mean, he literally was the king. While he was there in Italy, I think he won 3 Scudettos, 58 to 61.
Yeah, that's right.
He was second only to the Pope. He was that popular. He was a god, John Charles.
Oh yeah, he was. He was a very impressive big guy as a person, but also as a man, because he was about 6'1", 6'2". And he did so well for Juventus, but sadly, quite a few players, English players and Scottish players, have gone to Italy, but they've never lasted, or they didn't last as long as John did. Dennis Law went out. Dennis was only there a season. So was Jimmy Greaves, and so was Joe Baker. So, there was a lot of disappointment for players that went out to Italy, British-based players, except for Big John. So everybody in Italy loved Big John.
Now, in that game where you played in Italy, you also played against Fabio Capello, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah, he was playing in midfield against me in midfield, and the Juventus had a good side then. I think they were very successful at that time. But I remember scoring my goal. I was really pleased with it, because what had happened is we were under the cosh, and we broke out, and we got down one of the wings, and one of the guys crossed it into the box. Well, always when it went into the box and the Doug was there, I always was looking outside the box, or just inside the box, for loose balls, because he was such a big figure, was Derek Dougan, that even if he didn't get his head to the ball and defenders got their head to the ball, they didn't really make a good clearance. And that, like I said, I was always on the lookout for these loose balls. And this is what happened. The ball went into the box. It was headed out, and I think I was about 23 yards out, and it was in the air, and I just waited, and then I just volleyed it with my left foot and in the bottom left-hand corner. When you've hit it sweet, and I hit it sweet, and I knew he wasn't going to get it, the goalkeeper, so that was the equaliser. So we left there, one each, so it was a great result, and nice to see Big John again.
And there was an incident in that game. I don't know if you recall it. There was a piece about Phil Parkes in the Back Pass magazine, and in here he says that Capello spat in his face, and Big Phil, because Phil was a big unit, wasn't he? He said,
he was.
Yeah, he said, if you come to Wolverhampton in the second leg, you're dead. And it says at the bottom, Capello actually didn't arrive in Wolverhampton. Now, whether that was anything to do with Phil Parkes, I don't know, or he was injured. But the Italians, they used to get up to all sorts on the pitch, didn't they?
Well, that's the kind of temperament, and it's like the South Americans. They just think that's part and parcel of the game. Yeah. They just try to upset you, and they say, you Englishmen, you're supposed to be gentlemen, not do this, and then they would be up to all the tricks that they could get up to. So that was another part of your discipline, really. So you just had to keep your head.
And what was it like playing in Europe back in those days? Because, Europe's not what it is today. We know all about the opposition, the Champions League and the Europa League. All the games are on TV. It wasn't like that back in the early 70s. It was quite new. It was quite fresh. We didn't know these opponents that we played. I remember talking to Alan when he was saying that they played Ajax in 1970, and he looks at this fella who got number 14 on his back, and why is he wearing a different number shirt? And then when he started playing, he said he can wear whatever number he likes. But you played against some giants of the game, didn't you, back in those European days, that we didn't realise how brilliant they were at that time.
That's right, and the other guy that played for Juventus then was Haller. He was a great West German player. He played for Juventus he was in midfield alongside Capello. I don't know about Big Lofty. I'm sad if that's happened to him, but Lofty, like you say, was a big guy, but he was a lovely big guy, was Phil, and he was quite feisty at times, but he was a big gentle giant. But it was wonderful playing in Italy. We'd actually played in the Anglo-Italian Cup, and I think we won it. So we were quite at home against the Italian teams, because their style of play was they gave you the midfield, and they would be defence-minded and try and hit you on the counter. So we had a team that was quite capable of handling that style of play. So we were fine with that. But we did well in Europe, and I can recall in the UEFA Cup run that we played all our first games away from home, and I think we felt more comfortable with that, and then get them back to Molineux, because usually away from home we could get a good result.
And that Molineux crowd is a great crowd. They know the football, don't they? Bill McGarry, what was he like as a character? Because when I interviewed Kenny, I kind of got the idea that Bill McGarry wasn't the greatest of talkers.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't a great. He wasn't a great personality.
Yeah.
He was. As far as I know, he was definitely a good midfield player. But he had great ideas on the game, and because I was a midfield player, I kind of bought into a lot of his ideas. He was good thinking. I mean, he had us playing in a 4-3-3 shape, but we had players switching over, especially in midfield. When I was playing with Kenny Hibbett, Kenny, whenever we would get the ball down one side, me and Kenny used to swap. Kenny would go to the right, and I over to the left where I was, and I would go out to where he was. So, and we had great movement between the centre forwards. And Bill McGarry was clever enough with Derek Dugan. Derek was left-footed. He didn't play Derek down the left side. He played him down the right side. And, of course, he was going onto the ball then on his left foot and instead of his right foot the other way, which he wasn't as good with his right foot, obviously, as his left. But he had great ideas on football and free kicks, set pieces. And me and him used to practice penalties. So we used to have a bit of fun with penalties. But personality-wise, zero. It was just, one of them things. He just, for whatever reason, he just didn't talk to people. He'd get on the bus and he wouldn't even say good morning.
Mm. Strange.
Yeah, that was just the way he was. But he certainly knew his football.
But I'm guessing the Doog was the polar opposite, because the Doog was a larger-than-life character, and another character that sadly walked away from football was, people say the great, and sometimes Peter Knowles was the great Peter Knowles, one of the greatest football players that we've ever had, who retired at the age of 24, having scored over 100 goals for Wolverhampton Wanderers. What was Peter like, and how bizarre was it when he left football to take up the Jehovah's Witness faith?
The thing was, Gabbie, when I went to Wolves, all this process was starting. He had become a Jehovah's Witness, but I wasn't paying any attention to it, because a lot of the lads were saying, okay, he'll forget about it, he won't do this and he won't do that. And they used to be taking the Michael out of him, really, and things like that, and especially the Doug, because the thing was with Peter being a Yorkshireman, he liked money.
I'll tell Terry Curran that. He's from the same village. You'll love that, Terry will.
So there's no way that Peter would have given up that lightly, because Peter was earning good money, and he would have gone on to earn even more money. But the thing was, him and his future wife decided that they were going to be Jehovah's Witness. And after 10 games, when I was at Wolves, we were top of the first division, and we played Nottingham Forest at Molineux. We drew 3 each, and Peter Knowles took his shirt off for the last time, and he walked towards the North Bank, and he threw his shirt in the crowd. And the players, they still didn't think that Peter would quit. But that's what he did. And in fairness to Peter, in total respect, Peter, he still is a Jehovah's Witness, and he changed his life completely. And I remember I think it was 2 years ago, Peter Knowles' brother was come up for the golf, and he stayed at Airbnb. My wife and myself, we have a bed and breakfast in a place called Fenwick in Ayrshire, and his brother stayed with us, and I said to got talking to his brother, and I said to his brother, I said it was a real shock for me, because I heard the talk about it, but I didn't know how if it was genuine that it was going to happen. And he said, yeah, he says, in fairness to him, Jim, this was his brother talking, he said he stuck with it, and his brother says this, he said he was a great footballer, but I totally respect him as a man, because he stuck to his principles, and he never went back to football.
Now, you say his brother, I'm assuming it's Cyril that played for Tottenham.
No, it wasn't Cyril.
Oh, okay.
It was the other brother. Cyril was obviously... Cyril's dead now, God rest his soul, but the thing was, it wasn't Cyril. I can't remember his brother's name now.
Because it would have been, if Peter Knowles would have carried on and playing, Cyril and Peter would have played against each other in that game, wouldn't they? In the final?
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And in my humble opinion, I think Peter would have played for England as well.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any doubt in that. He was a terrific sportsman. He just at times I didn't know him that well, but a lot of the boys said his temperament was a little bit suspect. But with great talent, at times there is always a little problem with with different things that go on in your life, and I think Peter would have been a great player for England if he'd have stayed in the game. It's a sad loss.
Now, how come you left Wolves? It was round about 74 after the League Cup final, would it be? Because you were pretty much ever present, wasn't you, Jim, at Wolves?
Yeah, I was pretty much ever present, but I had a fallout with Bill McGarry, and we never patched it up, and at the time I hadn't spoke to Bill McGarry for 3 months, so it wasn't, whenever Mickey Bailey wasn't in the team, I was captain, so it wasn't a very nice atmosphere to be around, and to be honest, it was the best thing that happened when I moved from Wolves for that reason alone. But as regards Wolves as a team and a place to live, I loved it there. The supporters were great to me, and I had a lot of good teammates, and we were a very good side.
Now, you had the chance of going to local rivals Aston Villa after Wolverhampton Wanderers, but you didn't perceive them to be as big as Man United. To be fair, I don't think anybody would perceive them to be as big as Man United, because United are one of the greatest clubs on the planet. Tommy Docherty was the manager of United, and he was rebuilding a bit, wasn't he? Dennis Law had pretty much gone over to the other side, to City. Bobby Charlton had retired. George was in and around. You had arrived at Manchester. So there was a lot of young players, but you got relegated that season, didn't you?
Yeah, when I went to United, I think they were second bottom, and they were having an awful time. And I think the problem was there was actually 4 groups of players in the dressing room. The dressing room was quite toxic, because there was players still from Sir Matt Busby's time, from Frank O'Farrell's time, and from Wilf McGuinness's time, and obviously there were new players in Tommy Docherty's time. And the atmosphere wasn't very good, and there was a bit of a clique with different people, and that kind of thing takes time to sort itself out. And I don't think there was a captain in place at that moment. But afterwards, Tommy Docherty got Martin Buchan in. He put him in as captain, and I think between Martin and the dog, he began to get the club the way they wanted it to be. But the thing with going to Manchester United, I should have gone to Manchester United when I was 20. because when I was at Sheffield, I was going to leave Sheffield, and Man United had just won the league. That was in '67, and they were in the European Cup, obviously, in 1968. And Sir Mark Busby had said that if any players become available, and it fitted his criteria, then he would be spending some money. And seemingly, I was going. All the papers were full of it. I was going to Manchester United, but in the end, it all fell through, and quite a lot of people have since told me that it fell through because Sheffield Wednesday wanted too much money. But I should have gone to Manchester United when I was 20.
Now, as much as you loved your time at Sheffield, when Manchester United does come calling, it is very difficult for a player of any age to turn down Man United. They actually don't, and they go there. How things could have changed. But
yeah, absolutely, because of course they won the European Cup the following year. So it was touch and go. It looked like it was going to happen, and then all of a sudden it stopped, and this was what the main reason was they were asking for too much money. And so Mark Busby had he would only pay what he thought was a fair price. And I know he missed Mike England at Blackburn going to Spurs because he wouldn't pay the amount of money that Spurs paid for him.
Now, you were at Manchester, you were at United, you were playing City, you played in that game that, although it didn't relegate United because other results went that way, and I think even if United would have won, they may have still got relegated. But it was that back heel by Dennis Law who just shrugged his shoulder, and that was it. There was a pitch invasion, and the game didn't get finished, did it? That was in about the 87th minute. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The thing was, Dennis was always Dennis, a fantastic player. Lovely man, great guy. Dennis backheeled it and he literally walked off the field. He never celebrated, and anybody that knows Dennis Law knows Dennis Law's salute and his celebration. But the weird thing about it was when Dennis had scored the goal and he went down the tunnel about 2 or 3 minutes later, the game was abandoned. Yeah. And I was pretty close to the tunnel, so I got myself down the tunnel as fast as I could because it was just people on the pitch. And when I got to our dressing room, I think I was about the first in our dressing room. Who's sitting in our dressing room in the corner with his head in his hands? Dennis Law, still in his Manchester City kit. What? And it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Well, of course, I knew Dennis because I had played with him for Scotland, and I went over to see if he was okay, and we just had a little cuddle and what have you. And I says, "Are you okay?" And he says, "Well, what do you think?" It's because, that was the way it was. And then the doc come in, and I thought, oh, my God, there could be trouble here. But as it was, Tommy Docherty come over to him and shook hands with him. And he never said anything to Tommy Docherty. And he just spoke to our lads. And Dennis was in the dressing room, and he says, "Right, lads," he says, "that'll possibly put us down. We'll keep fighting. But if it does, never mind. We're going to come straight back up next year."
And you did.
And we did. So Tommy Docherty, like I said, he was very confident in his ability, and he was a top-class manager.
Now, again, it went a little bit sour for you with the Doc. I'm kind of guessing with younger players, he's okay, gives you your debut early. With older players or more senior players, it's probably not the same dynamics, is it, with the Doc towards more senior players?
Yeah, well, I had first hand of this because I was a young player at Chelsea when I was 18, and then I was an experienced player at 26, 27 with Tommy Docherty for Man United. But it wasn't Tommy Docherty that had a problem with it, Man U. I had a bust up with the assistant manager.
Yeah, got you.
So that was what the problem was, and it wasn't going to work really, because obviously he was the assistant manager, and the best thing to happen really was for me to leave. I didn't want to leave because Man United was a club that I'd always dreamed of playing for. It should have happened when I was 20, but then it happened when I was 26. And it was a horrendous decision to have to make. In fact, I went to Southampton for 3-4 days just to think about it, and I just got away from everywhere. But then I decided it was better that I went to Southampton, and that was what happened.
Now, did you go to Southampton while United were still in the second division, or did you get promoted?
No, we were 2/3 through the season when I went to Southampton. So we were top of the league by maybe about 7 or 8 points, and there was no doubt about it. We were going to go straight back up.
Yeah.
Nobody was kind of giving us a game really.
So,
and we got a few new players in as well, and Docherty had moved people out of the club, and the atmosphere was 100 times better.
He brought in Steve Coppell, Gordon Hill from memory, Stuart Pearson as well from Hull City.
Right. Stuart Pearson came in at the end of the season for the beginning of the next season. Coppell and Graham Hill come later. I had left, and then Willie Morgan left, and then Coppell and Graham Hill, they come in then, I think.
Now, the season after in 1976, come what may, literally, you end up playing against Manchester United. It was almost, for you, what dressing room do I go into? Last year it would have been the United dressing room. Now I'm in the Saints dressing room. McMenemy had bought you. You were playing there with Peter Osgood and Mick Shannon, and they had some decent players, didn't they, that Southampton team? But you were underdogs that day. But talk us through that Wembley final.
Yeah, you could get 6-1 for us, but the thing was, like you just said, we had quite a lot of experience. We had Peter Rodriguez, who had, I don't know how many Welsh caps, and we had Jim Steele and David Peach and Mel Blythe in the defence. But up front was where we were scoring, really. We had, obviously, Mick Shannon up front with Peter Osgood and myself in midfield. And we had a couple of young lads in midfield to do the running around. And Bobby Stokes was the other player up front. So we had an experienced team, but we also had quite a few classy players in the team. And Man United were a young side. And Wembley's a funny place because I remember Malcolm McDonald telling us to all and sundry what he was going to do to Liverpool when he was at Newcastle. And I remember Malcolm walking off the pitch. He was totally deflated because things just never happened for him. Sometimes it didn't happen at Wembley for a lot of people. A lot of people freeze at Wembley, and even experienced players. And what I was saying to our younger players was, look, we've got experienced players in here. As long as you lads keep going, then hopefully the class that we've got will tell on Man United, because they had quite a lot of young players. And that was what happened in the end. They kind of run out of steam. But probably the first 20 minutes, Man U were all over us. But then we got a grip of the game, and I think we were as good as them then. And
you put two sublime passes in that game in particular, sublime passes. You stuck them both on a tanner in the first half for Mick Shannon. And if Shannon had got a left foot, Southampton would have been 1-0 up. And then in the second half, you put the winning goal on for Bobby Stokes. Two wonderful passes. I posted it up on my Facebook page last evening. What ball did you think was the better pass from you? I thought the one to Shannon in the first half was slightly better than Stokes.
Yeah, I thought so as well, because there was more of a degree of where it could go wrong. Whereas I could see myself when we got the ball about the halfway line, and I can't remember who it was passed it square to me, but instead of touching the ball, I let the ball run.
Yeah.
And we're playing with Mick. I used to just say to Mick, you run, I'll hit you. It doesn't matter, run where you want, I'll hit you. And this was what happened. Mick was in a kind of an inside left position, and as I got on the ball, I could see where he was, I could see where he was running, and I knew where to hit it. But the thing I was worried about was it running on, so I've hit it underneath, so that when it hit the grass, it come back.
Yeah.
So what's happened is, if you watch Mick, the ball comes back, and it comes back a little bit high on Mick, and Mick kind of he stabs at it, but he doesn't get a good shot away. But if he'd have just arrived just a wee bit later, the ball would have calmed down. But when I hit it over the top, so that it would spin back towards our forwards, rather than it go out of play like you would play a golf shot.
And again,
and I was really chuffed about it, and I thought, oh God, but that wasn't to be. And of course the second one, I could hear little Bobby shouting in the inside left position, and I thought, I've just got to lay it over the top of the defenders, but not too hard again, so that it cushions itself, and then Bobby can get on the ball and it doesn't run onto the goalkeeper. And I knew from being at United, and I told the team that when they make a clearance, or there's a clearance made, they will push up quick. And what we had to do was make sure our forwards would come back with them, and a midfield player would make a run from deep, and that way we could get in behind them. And Bobby's kind of done that a little bit, even though he was a striker, and that's how we got the goal. And it's all credit to Bobby, because Bobby was a good striker of the ball, and he's hit it so well, and I think he's hit it so quick. I think he's caught Alex Stepney a little bit with the shot. He's had the shot so quick. So that was the goal, and it was fabulous for Southampton. The town went absolutely berserk, and so did we, the players. We had a great time.
And you had some characters in that dressing room.
Great characters.
No bigger character. Could I just say the biggest character in that dressing room was Peter Osgood? Yeah,
Ozzy was a lovely man. Ozzy, as Alan Hudson and anybody else would tell you, Alan was a good friend of Peter's. Peter was always very sociable, and he would always, try and help anybody. He had a great way about him, Peter. And of course, I started with Peter at Chelsea when we were both 17 years of age, and Peter's first game for Chelsea was a youth cup game, and it was at Upton Park, which was where West Ham was then. And the manager Dick Force, who told me before the game, we were sat beside him, he said that there was a young boy who'd played in the juniors at the weekend, and he was going to play him tonight. And he said for me to look after him, because I was in the reserves then. And I says, yeah, no problem. So this tall, skinny guy come in and sat down where the number 9 shirt was, and we introduced ourselves. And I got talking to him, and I says, you okay? He says, no, I'm very nervous. I says, there's no need to be nervous, just you go out and enjoy yourself, and I'm sure it'll work out. And we played West Ham, who had a good youth team then, and it was in the FA Youth Cup, and we beat them 5-2. And Ozzy and myself, we got 2 goals each, and somebody else. So that was the beginning of Peter Osgood at Chelsea.
And he went on to be the king of Stamford Bridge, and you're absolutely
definitely.
right. Uddy absolutely loved and adored Oz. The stories that Al
just
tells
maybe
us about Oz.
Maybe sometimes Dave didn't appreciate him.
100%.
Dave Sexton.
100%.
Yeah, because Dave tended to favour hard-working players above flair players.
Yeah.
And I think Peter and Alan Hudson had a wee bit of a problem with Dave because of that. And I think Dave he tended to favour Ian Hutchinson because Ian Hutchinson and Alan Birchnell, they were more players that would work hard and give you 100%, whereas Ozzy and Alan were flair players.
Definitely. I mean, Uddy always says to me that he'd tear a strip off the players, but you'd never ever see him give players the credit. And Uddy would say to me, Chelsea wouldn't have done what Chelsea did without Peter Osgood. But he also said Ozzy loved himself and he loved a row. Did he ever play against Mike England, or had Mike retired by the time he'd gone to Saints?
No, Mike England was still at Spurs.
Because they had some right battles, them pair did. Uddy used to say it was like a boxing match when I know you just used to throw a ball in there on purpose.
Yeah, no, I think Ozzy and Jack Charlton and Norman Hunter had a bit of fun in games as well, especially that cup final. But Ozzy was a lovely guy. He was feisty, but he was lovely. What you see of Ozzy is what you get. And I had lots of laughs with him at Southampton. Of course, to win the FA Cup with him at Southampton, that was absolutely wonderful. And him and Mickey, they were two different players, Mickey Shannon and Peter. Mickey was very strong running, and once he was on the run, and he scored some great goals. So, having them two up front, they were a handful for anybody.
And with Mick Shannon, he always come across that football was his hobby and his absolute pleasure was horse racing.
Well, that's what he used to tell Laurie. He says, don't forget, Gaffer, football's my hobby, racing's, that was the way he used to talk to a Gaffer, and the Gaffer just used to laugh.
No, you had such a wonderful, wonderful career. You played with some brilliant players. I mean, you've always been described, wherever I've read about you or looked about you, classy, cultured. You were a one-touch, two-touch player, up there with any great player that's graced a football pitch in this country, in my opinion. Who was the best player? Now, that's such a difficult question for you. Who was the best player that you played with? And who was the greatest character in the dressing room that you had during your career?
Oh, now that's a really difficult question, that really.
Yeah.
I think I would have to go back to when I was a kid and when I was dreaming about football. I always wanted to play with Dennis Law.
Yeah.
Dennis just stuck out with that big blonde mop of hair he had, and the way he carried himself and everything else. And I think to play with Dennis, I think that was fantastic. To play with Jim Baxter as well. Jim Baxter's a close second.
Yeah.
Because Jim Baxter was very, very confident on the ball. Probably the most confident player I've ever played with. And them two's got to be up there. But I would have loved to play with George best. But I played in quite a few testimonials with George. But I'd love to have played with him in either a national team or a club team. But that wasn't to be. But he was certainly named properly, George Best.
Yeah. Now, you went over to the NASL in, was it 76 through memory? You played for
No, it was
Chicago.
a wee bit later, Gabbie.
77 was it?
Yes, it was either 77 or maybe beginning of 78.
Was it Chicago Sting?
Chicago Sting. It was after, they kind of named it after a film because it was a film out at the time with Robert Redford and Paul Newman. It was about, gangsters in Chicago.
How did that move come about? Because was that at the end of your career at Southampton?
Yeah, Laurie decided to break up the team, which I don't think was right. I think he should have kept the cup final team together for a bit longer, but he started breaking up the team. And the reason I went to Chicago was Bill Foulkes, who played for Man United when they won the European Cup.
Yeah.
He was one of the assistant managers at Manchester United when I was there with Tommy Docherty. And I went to Chicago's thing because Bill Foulkes was the coach. And he was a lovely guy and a very big Man United man.
And how did did you enjoy your time out there in Chicago in the winter?
Yes, I did. It was different. The only thing was that I didn't think the quality was good. I played one season, and the guy that owned the club, he was in touch with me, I think, for the next 3 or 4 seasons. But I couldn't tell him the truth. I just didn't want to go out there again. It just wasn't me, and I wanted to go somewhere else.
Was that Lincoln?
Not particularly, no. That wasn't the best time of my life. I went there with Willie Bell as a coach, and that was a difficult period in my career. I enjoyed Lincoln. I was like I said, the assistant manager coach, and Willie Bell got sacked, and the chairman asked me to take over the team, and I took over the team, and we were struggling a bit down the bottom of the league, and it looked like we had a chance of perhaps going out the league.
Yeah.
But I managed to keep the team in the league, and when it had all kind of finished, the chairman came to me and said I'd done a great job and would I be applying for the job? And I said, I'm sorry, Chairman. I said, I've never applied for a job in my life. So I thought he can take that how he wants to take it, but if he didn't know what I could do then, there's no way I was going to apply for the job. And sadly, a guy called Colin Murphy come in, and he was a total waste of time and not anything like anybody that I wouldn't have signed for him. I was just still under a player's contract, and I wanted to leave Lincoln ASAP.
Where was your next port of call? Because you did have a brief spell in management, but then it didn't quite work. Yeah,
I did quite a bit. I went to Runcorn, which I really enjoyed. I had a good chairman there, Alan. He was a lovely guy. We had some good players at Runcorn. They were a good semi-professional side. And then I worked for the PFA for quite a while, with football in the community. And while I was doing football in the community at Halifax, the manager left, and the chairman of Halifax asked me if I would take on the job. And I took on the job for about 18 months and thoroughly enjoyed it.
So what happened? Because ultimately you walked away from the game, you left the game. I personally, it's all with Uddy and like with Terry Curran and players that could play the game. I would have loved to have seen you guys stay in the game and influence the next generation of players and show the young kids how to play football properly.
Well, the thing was the game was changing a lot, to be honest, and there was a lot of guys coming in as managers and coaches, and they were talking to directors, and they were taking the game in a different direction, and I think the game suffered quite a bit for it. Whereas the old way of doing things was the boot room, where there would be the manager and there'd be the coaches in there, and like Liverpool did. When Bill Shankly left, they gave Bob Paisley the job. Yeah. When Bob Paisley left, it was Ronnie Fagan, and then it was Kenny Dalglish, and then Roy Evans, and that was what they did. But all the other clubs were listening to the wrong type of people, I think, and a lot of the players that could have helped young players and helped football in general were leaving the game in droves.
Yeah, sadly, that is about the long and short of what has happened in the game. And I think for a certain period of time, English football certainly nosedived. There's some green little shoots now, isn't there? You look at England at national level, we seem to be playing a better way.
Oh, definitely.
It looks as though it's turning full circle. And I turn on the telly these days, and I see some decent teams, some good players. In fact, with Terry Curran, I'm always on Facebook with Terry, and I linked him into Rochdale's goal. They put 16 passes together, because Curran always says it don't matter who you are, you can play football. Stop whacking the ball up and pick your player out and pass and move.
Yeah.
And that's the way football. What players of today, of the modern game, do excite you?
I think the modern game's getting better now. Yeah. I really do. And particularly in Scotland, because as you know, Gabbie, I live in Scotland now, and I watch a lot of Scottish football, and there's a lot of great young Scottish players coming through now, and you'll see and hear about them in the next few years. And also England, I think Gareth Southgate has got a better idea about what should be happening, and with him being an ex-player, I think he's doing very well, and he's very good to the media as well, because the thing was, great players weren't always great in front of the cameras or talking to the media, so that was always a problem. I mean, with due respects to Bob Paisley knew football inside out, one of the most successful managers ever, and he couldn't really go and talk to the cameras, and that wasn't him. He would rather talk to players, and he knew his way about a football club with him and Bill Shankly. So, I think the future in football is looking better, but I would like to see more of the clubs letting the young players, giving them a chance, and never mind getting all these guys over from the continent, because a lot of them are kissing the badges it were, and for another $5,000 they'll go down the road and play for somebody else. Yeah. So I would much prefer if the directors of the clubs and the people involved in football would give youth its chance. It's nice to see what Frank Lampard is doing at Chelsea, because Chelsea has always been a team that gave young players a chance. Celtic's the same here in Glasgow. They give young players a chance, and I would like to see that continue.
And so would I as well. Final shout for your bed and breakfast, because you won an award as well, because you didn't just win things on the football pitch, you win things on the television with your bed and breakfast, don't you?
Yeah, we got a phone call from the people that run the show, 4 in a bed, and they asked us to go on the show. I think it was something like either 18 months or 2 years. They were asking us if we would go on, but we couldn't go on because you have to leave 2 weeks free, and we couldn't do that because we were doing well in the business. And the most important thing is we enjoy the business. We're passionate about it. And it's great when you meet different people from different nationalities, and we really love the B&B, and it's all up to date, and we get quite a lot of the ex-players coming. I had David Peach down a few months ago, and David Peach used to play at Southampton, and we get quite a lot of people, a lot of football fans, so it's nice to see them and nice to talk to them about football. And I had one down the other day. It was quite a mixture. He was a big Sheffield Wednesday fan, the husband Mark, and his good lady Nancy, she was a big Four in the Bed fan.
Okay.
So we had the best of both worlds, and we had they were here for about 3 days, and they were in Glasgow, and there's lovely places all around us. There's plenty of golf going on and everything else. Gabbie, it's a real good location. We're only 20 minutes from Glasgow, and we thoroughly enjoy the B&B.
Have you got a website or anything, or a phone number that you want to give out? Because people listening to this might think, oh, I wouldn't mind going up there and seeing.
It's called Langside, Langside, Bed and Breakfast, and it's in Fenwick, which is Fenwick, and that is in Ayrshire, and the postcode is KA3 6AL.
And have you got a Facebook page, or do you do social media for your B&B? Let's have them as well.
My wife does the social media for it. And so if they look it up, Langside Bed and Breakfast, they'll get all the information there.
Brilliant. And your events company, finally, do you still do that, raising money for charity with some of your football events? Yeah, we probably start again, hopefully in January. But we've the last couple of years we've helped 9 different charities, and it's a good format. We have 2 legends of football, and one in each half, and we have a compere, and we talk to them about their football career, and it's wonderful to listen to what they have to say, and managers they liked and managers they didn't like, and where did they think they played well and where they played badly, or whatever else was going on in their life. And it's really quite good, because it's actually coming from the horse's mouth when you listen to them on the stage, and it's not information that you're getting from anywhere else. It's right there, and the fans, the people that come along to the shows, they certainly enjoy it, and they're great nights. And how can people link up with your events company as well, Jim? Is there a Facebook? Is there a website? Yeah, the Facebook to link up with me is Legends of Scottish and World Football. Brilliant. Can I wish you all the very best, sir, going forward? I've had a wonderful trip down memory lane, and, revisiting those halcyon days of the golden decade of the 70s. Thanks, mate. Thank you, Gabbie. It's been wonderful, and could you say hello to Terry and say hello to Alan for me? And I hope they're both doing well, and say hello to your listeners, and well done yourself. I've thoroughly enjoyed this interview, and good luck to you, and maybe I'll see you in the future. Lovely. Thanks, Jim. We'll keep in touch anyhow, and I'll put all your social medias and all your links up and retweet it, and get as many people knowing what you're about, where you are, brilliant. How to contact you, and how to get up there to Bonnie, Scotland, and buy you a beer. Okay, Gabbie. Keep in touch. Thanks, Jim. All the best. Cheers now. And love to Debbie as well. Thank you. Yeah. Bye. Cheers, pal. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.
SRB Media. In dreams beside the world, wanna go where I'm not a saying or just a word.